Harrison, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Sean. Thank you for having me.
All right, so I read with somewhat astonishment that the White House Correspondents Association, quote, pushed back against the White House's plan to exert control over the briefing room seating assignments for journalists. In an email to members, the association, which is made up of an elite, totally out of touch left-wing journalist, no, that's me, covering the Trump administration, said it was aware of the reported efforts. So give us an update. What is the status of these reforms?
Well, the White House Correspondents Association, which you know are all too well, they're pulling their hair out right now because they don't want to lose their legitimacy. Not that they really ever had anything, but for the longest time, for decades, the WHCA has really been hailed as this untouchable group of elitists that the White House has to bend a knee to. And we're coming over here and saying, we don't owe you guys anything. You guys just spent the whole entire campaign concocting fake news story after fake news story. And then, oh, wait, you also blocked and tackled for the Biden-Harris administration for 4 years. And now you want to act like you are our friends. You're not our friends. We have to work with you because the American people are interested in what this president is doing. And we're standing firm. We'll see what this actually ends up playing out to be. But right now, I think the changes have been great. A lot of people behind closed doors, you know, these off the record conversations more than most, they actually like the changes and they realize it's all just smoke and mirrors when it comes to the people crying foul.
Yeah, I think most of the people not in the front row, not NBC and not the Washington Post, probably love the opportunity to get a front row seat. But here's my take on this, Harrison. This is the taxpayers' room. It's the American people's room. And the idea that these guys put their little nameplate on it as if it's their seat is insane. And I think I'm glad to hear you guys are doing this. I think it's welcome. But I don't understand how they can push back. You go in and say, it's not your room. We're taking your nameplates off. And in my opinion, frankly, I think it should be open seating, like every other adult organization says, you know, first come, first serve. You want a front row seat? Get there early. That's how it works. Even at church, if you want to sit in the front row, I'm Catholic. No one sits in the front row. But in press briefings, they probably want that. I just don't understand why you just don't say, great, it's open seating. If you want to come early, come early. If you don't, come in late, you can stand. That's how a normal adult association would work.
We got to do the old school deli numbers. You come in and get your number, pull the deli thing. And, you know, if you're in A1, guess what? You get a front row seat. I don't think it's a bad idea. Listen, all options are on the table. What we're realizing now is that they're not going to boycott. They realize that the Trump White House is their bread and butter. If they don't cover it, guess what? Their ratings and their viewership are going to go down far lower than they're already at. So we have all the leverage. It's a great place to be. The American people are actually fascinated by what we're doing because, wait a second, we're bringing in alternative media outlets that are coming in. They're taking a seat, and now they have access to the president and to the White House that they never had before. And the other thing I like to remind people is that you cannot forget that Biden took away the press badges of over 400 members of the White House press corps, and no one said a word. And we reinstated all of them on day one. We have a booming, you were here a couple weeks ago. You saw the press briefing room. The place is nuts. It's absolutely wild. When I was an assistant press secretary, we were here during COVID. If we had 19 people in that room, it would be something. Now we have like 200 people on any given day going in and out, foreign press, domestic press, liberal press, conservative press. It's an open game for everyone, and we're just opening the door to everyone.
It's funny to me, I've said the same thing or a similar thing for a long time. If you support the First Amendment and the freedom of press, you should welcome this. In fact, they just like the stranglehold, right? The idea that I get my front row seat, I pretty much guarantee getting a question. I don't really care about the rest of you folks when you lose your pass, when you never get a question, because at the end of the day, it's really not about the First Amendment. It's about me, the Washington Post, CNN. It's not about the freedoms. And we like to wrap ourselves in this blanket, but it's really a selfish organization. It's all about them, not about anybody else.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, funny story, when we first unveiled the new rotation, we had a member of the press said, well, I really don't feel comfortable being the pool reporter today for At Home Speak, basically the lead reporter who's telling the press what all is going down at the White House. And we said, well, take it or leave it. This is not going to be some, my Spartacus moment where I'm standing on values and standing on merit. You take it or you leave it. And guess what? He ended up staying and he ended up reporting on it.
This is like when I was a kid and my mom would be like, then fine, stay home. And I'd be like, all right, fine, I'm going.
Or
And
don't
that's
eat
the
dinner.
thing.
Go to bed
Right.
hungry. That's what my mom used to say.
They knew it. So let's kind of pivot for a second. And I want to get into some other issues, but like the big correspondence dinner, right? You guys called out the fact that Amber Ruffin was not only had said it previously that she didn't like Donald Trump, but she continues to talk about how she wasn't going to go out the other side. And when that was exposed, the Correspondents Association said, oh yeah, we've now decided to disinvite her, as if that wasn't, they only did it because she made it untenable for them. But the bottom line is, were you guys, I know Karoline announced on this show exclusively earlier that you guys weren't going to go. Is that final now? No one's going from the administration? Because during my tenure, right, it was the president said, I'm not going, but if you guys want to, you can. Some people did, some people didn't. Have you guys issued guidance to the rest of the administration? Because I think some people still love that selfie with the D-list celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, look at Gridiron. No one went for Gridiron, and then White House Correspondents' Dinner, no one's going to go. And it's not because we're really told not to go. We have no interest in going. Why are we going to smooze and like rub shoulders with people that like talk bad about us? And then they had the audacity of inviting a so-called comedian that called me and the rest of my colleagues in this building murderers. Like, if you're willing to invite a comedian with those values and that perspective on us, we don't feel welcome there. And actually, we don't want to be there. It's not something that we actually enjoy being a part of. So we'll see what ends up happening on that night. But we have no intentions of going to that party. And I actually don't even know if it's going to go on. I'm hearing that this dinner actually might just fold and it might not actually happen. So we'll see what happens.
Wow. But for the record, I mean, I just want to get it clear. You're not a murderer.
I'm not a murderer.
but
thou shalt not kill.
But you know, I think that Karoline, she's got some. I mean, you might want to look at. I mean, I'm just wondering where this came from. Somebody, you know. Anyway, have you guys? Are there any alternative plans? I know that it's Mrs. Trump's birthday. There's Substack is hosting an alternative event. I mean, is there a sense that hey, we should go somewhere else?
There is a sense, you know, we got to look at turning events around is not the easiest thing. You know, the White House very well. We are up against a very tight timeline, but if the president wants to do an alternative event, guess what? We'll do an alternative event. Maybe that's here at the White House. Maybe that's somewhere else. We don't know yet. Nothing really to report out, but I know you would be invited, Sean. So we'll see. We'll let you know.
I just that was the bait. I'm glad you took the. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so for one last question on the press, and then I want to turn to tariffs and tomorrow. Is there you served in the previous White House in Trump 1? Is there any organization that when you came back you said, wow, like or maybe it's a reporter, I actually kind of thought you were a good person, and I'm just amazed at like your TDS, your Trump derangement syndrome?
Well, there's a lot of it, and there's been people when I was here the first time around that have gone on now they're anchors, and I really my jaw drops for them because I remember them behind the scenes when they were just White House correspondents, and now they got the big paycheck, they're making millions of dollars, and their TDS is for everyone to see. I'm not going to name drop anyone, but I think you know.
Caitlin Collins.
So, some of these people we all know Collins. Them. Hey, you know those initials sound right, but the reality is, behind closed doors, most of these people are actually decent. And then when they get into the briefing, like we have a briefing later on today, you'll see it's a completely different ballgame. It's like, wait a second, where was that person that were just offering us coffee? And now you're basically acting like we're murderers, if you will. So there's a lot of that. The reality is a lot of this is all for show. They realize that if they perform really well in the briefing, then the executives in the C-suite in New York are going to say, oh, wow, we really like that person. Guess what? Come contract time, you're going to get a raise and you make it an anchor position, which is what most of these people want anyways. So we all know what we're up against.
I remember I would have reporters after the briefing come into my office and say, hey, man, I just, you know, sorry if I got a little anxious or if I got a little animated, but you know how my bosses really needed. And I was like, that's the problem, that it's really not about, and everybody forgets that, and you know this because of the work that you in particular as the principal deputy do. I told Karoline at one point, she asked me, we were talking before the election, I said, the number one thing that you can do is have a principal deputy that is unequivocally has your back, knows what's happening. Because you, Harrison, with all due respect, are the guy that's doing the work. I know that, right? And I mean, look, in the military, you got an XO. You're the XO, and you got, and she's got a million things to do. You're the guy who keeps the trains going. And I would have guys come into my office and say, "Hey, man, really sorry about that." And I'm like, "You're not, though." Like,
No.
the briefing is this much of the day. The day is people like you and your team answering questions logistically, policy-wise, personnel announcements, managing, the potential interviews that the president or that your team is doing. But like, people like don't realize that the briefing is just a show for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever, where these guys are trying to audition. You're exactly right, for another show that they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and half of them are also signing contributor deals. I mean, the current president of the White House Correspondents Association literally signed a deal with MSNBC. He's going to be their weekend contributor or something like that. But he was supposed to be presiding over the entire White House Correspondents Association as a non-biased person. And then he's over here signing deals with MSNBC. You cannot make this stuff up. We've got an incredible team. And Sean, you know it very well. When they're the 30 minutes of the briefing, that's one thing. But then in between, they're in and out, asking logistics, they're emailing, they're calling, they're barging down your room. I'll be half mid-bite. And they're like, "Oh, we know you're eating lunch." And I'm like, "Yes, I am eating lunch." But then they proceed to ask a question. I'm like, these people are crazy. We deal with it. We have a phenomenal team, from Karoline being our leader in the office, all the way down, our wranglers. Every part of our team is amazing. Most of them, if not all of them, are all from the campaign. Karoline and I are the only people, and Davis Engel, he came, he was an assistant wrangler last time. We've got an incredible team. We know what we're doing. Karoline and I are not just colleagues, we're personal friends. We have kids similar ages. I have a 6-month-old. Her baby's 8 months old. She went to my wedding. So like, we're all one big happy family here, and we've got a great boss who makes our life easy. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, he must make it tough." No, he actually makes it easy. When President Trump speaks, our job is done.
Yes.
It's great.
And by the way, that team is so nimble. People don't appreciate the fact that you're literally running the White House, media operation. And I think I last count, I think it's 11 or 12. I mean, this is not, most corporations have massive press and comms teams. And I've always been, I think people are always blown away when I explain to them the sides of it. But Harrison, you touch on your boss, but let's talk about your other boss, because she did this great interview with Laura Trump, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. And she talked about how the day works. And it was so fascinating because in the interview, she acknowledged how many people like you and Karoline have young children. And she wants it to be a place that, gets stuff done on behalf of the president and the American people, but also recognizes that this shouldn't be a, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. kind of job. How has the environment there been for you guys to work in, the camaraderie among your teammates?
Yeah, so I mean, public service is a sacrifice, especially at the White House. None of us are looking for pats on the back or awards. We come in here early, we leave late, but we do it, and it's so rewarding, and our families are in full support. Listen, I've got a young baby at home. Is it easy? No. But the one thing that makes it worth it is we know everything that we're doing here is going to have effects when our daughter is, my age. So we're doing everything very hard work, but we've got God on our side too. We're also faith-filled. We sing worship music in lower press. Like, we are so faith-filled in our office. It's amazing. Before Karoline goes out there, she prays. This is something that we learned from our former boss, Kayleigh McEnany. So we've got a great team. Yes, a lot of young families, but we're all rowing in the same direction. And we have a funny joke in the West Wing. We're just white knuckling it all the way through. It's like, Jesus, take the wheel. And but hey, listen, the American people voted for this. President Trump is moving at Trump speed. It's all the Trump effect. And when we see the little things that, may not even be covered in the news, when we see MS-13 being deported, when Tren de Aragua gets deported, when we see inflation numbers go down, when the prices of eggs go down, all these things make it worth it. When we're about to achieve peace, not just in the Middle East, but in Eastern Europe, all of this makes it so worth it. And then also, when you bring your daughter into the Oval Office and she's doing tummy time on Reagan's rug in the Oval Office, it all makes it worth it. Seeing Marine One, there's a lot of little perks that you get to share with the family. So it's truly a blessing. Just grateful to be here.
I'll tell you, I told Karoline the same thing. Take lots of pictures because it moves quick, and you're going to want to show your kids this. And so I learned that from the people in the Biden administration or the Obama administration. They said just take lots of photos. I did. Yesterday, Kid Rock was there. Obviously, a lot of cool stuff that he did with the executive order. I talked about that early in the show, but he also brought Bill Maher. walk to me through what was the goal there? Do you guys anticipate the president do anything on Bill Maher? Do you think he broke any ground?
Yeah, so Bill Maher, he wasn't in the Oval Office. I believe there was going to be a private meeting
Private
or a
dinner.
dinner of some sort. Yeah, later on. It just speaks to the fact that people are coming to the table. People that are not necessarily Trump people are fascinated by President Trump, a man that has been able to withstand anything that's been thrown at him, and yet he still stands. And he's the most popular he's ever been in probably his entire life. So I think whether you like him or you don't like him, you've got to say, wow, if I can have dinner with this man, I'm going to
Oh
do
yeah.
it. So I think you're going to have a lot more people putting in requests to meet with President Trump because he's a fascinating man. And this is such an amazing time in American history with a president that is going to be monumental in many ways throughout the history books. So people like Bill Maher, wouldn't be surprised if Jake Tapper reaches out for dinner too.
No, no, don't
That's
do
one
that.
invite we can't say yes to. I don't know.
No way.
We'll
I was
see
gonna
what the
say,
president
please,
wants.
please no. By the way, just as a side note, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I think I mentioned this earlier. Hooters filed for Chapter 11. Jake was a former Hooters spokesman. So if you ever need to play that card, you can. But I will say tomorrow is Liberation Day, according to the president. He's going to announce these big tariffs. Walk us through how the day's going to go, though, logistically. How do you see these announcements being made? Because I think the entire world is going to be focused on the White House.
Yeah, so what we've been saying internally is that the first 2.5 months have been a lot of the campaign promises, right? Promises made, promises kept, getting girls out of boys, men out of women's sports, securing the border, working towards this reconciliation bill, preventing a government shutdown. And then now we're like in the monumental phase of the presidency where this is not the easy stuff. The past 2.5 months have been relatively easy, smooth sailing. And now we're doing the monumental stuff, i.e. these tariffs, and then also budget reconciliation in the next couple of weeks. But this is when we really have to put on our big boy pants, if you will, and tell the American people exactly what we're doing and how this is going to work. We're up against a media that you know very well is going to take the president's announcement tomorrow and make it seem like it's been doom and gloom. Meanwhile, gas prices are coming down, inflation is slowing, we're securing our border and doing all these other things, but they're really going to hang on this tariff talk. So what we're going to do tomorrow is make sure that you have a member of the administration on almost every single hour of television, of local radio, of local TV, podcasts like yours, making sure we articulate the president's message effectively. And what the message basically is that we have a main street in America that has been sold off to the highest bidder, or sometimes the lowest bidder, around the world. We are offshoring jobs to countries like Canada, Mexico, China, Vietnam, India. For what? For Americans to lose their jobs. President Trump has seen the decline of America. He's been talking about this not just since he's been elected, for decades. He's been talking about tariffs and and needing to get made in American policies back. And that's what we're doing. And in doing so, you're seeing businesses, you're seeing countries not just walk to the table, they're running to the table, they're picking up the phone, and they're saying, what can we do to avoid these tariffs? And you're seeing Japanese CEOs saying, we're about to increase 30% investment in our country. You're seeing companies like Apple invest $500 billion. You're seeing car companies like Hyundai invest billions of dollars in Louisiana. So you're seeing the Trump effect in action, i.e. these tariffs. And then a couple weeks later, we're going to have a reconciliation bill go through the House and the Senate and hopefully to the president's desk, in which you're going to see corporate taxes come down. You're going to see deregulation come down. You're going to see a heightened infrastructure for our energy. All these things are going to make America investable once more, and it's going to be a great thing for the American people.
So logistically, though, is this something that you guys do a Rose Garden announcement for early in the day? Is it in the Oval Office? Have you thought that through, how this rolls out?
Well, I don't want to preview too much, but Sean, because I like you and because Mother Nature is cooperating so well, I would not wave off the idea of it being an outdoor ceremony. We'll have Karoline preview the rest of it. But I think it's going to be a beautiful ceremony. We're going to have cabinet members. We're going to have everyday Americans here. And the president's going to have something that he's been talking about since the campaign trail. Liberation Day will be announced here tomorrow. And a lot of countries are going to be put on notice. But the other thing about it, and the president's been talking about it really well in the past couple of days, is that he's seeing countries realize that President Trump isn't playing around. They're realizing that we have him back. I think when you had 4 years of President Joe Biden sitting at the desk that I'm at right now, and not really been taken seriously, they realized that you cannot take President Trump's words as just words. They are always followed up with action, and he's going to do what he said what he said he was going to do. And this is why you have countries like Vietnam, India, coming to the table and saying, okay, we're going to lower our tariff burden on the United States because we don't want to be caught up in this war. At the end of the day, President Trump wants prices to come down for everyone, right? We want to see if you're tariffing us at 200% and we're only at 60%, if you bring it down to 60, that's great news for everyone. So it's going to be great. I think everyone's going to realize that this is all going to work out just fine. It worked well in the first administration. Joe Biden loved the tariffs so much that he didn't really remove any of them. And here we are again in Trump 2.0, and I think it's going to be just fine.
Harrison, one last personal question. I know when I was press secretary, Sarah took the podium sometime in May or June, whatever it was. Are you prepared, should you need to take that podium and brief if Karoline says, I need to bring in the righty?
Well, that was part of the conversation before I was even hired. It was like, Harrison, if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, you would be the next man up. And I think there's a burden there, right? There's like, oh crap, this actually can be the case. But I don't think Karoline makes that hiring decision if she didn't have that faith in me. I have that faith in myself. I've been doing enough TV and interacting with enough members of the press, but there's nothing like the real thing. And we are just praying against any buses or any form of attack against Karoline. That podium is most definitely hers. It was really the American people's and the president's. But I'm there ready however she needs me. But for now, I am going to be behind this camera, comfortably so.
Thank you for your generous time today. I appreciate it. Harrison Fields, good to see you. Keep plugging along. And we're looking forward to seeing what you guys unveil tomorrow.
Good to see you, Sean. God bless you.
Thanks.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.